Yo, 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 what is up? Live here. I forgot to share this on the social feeds. I'm trying to trying to fit in a quick live stream here before I go grab some dinner. But I wanted to talk about today. I saw a few comments on the latest episode of the Slacklife series on what did you film with? Was this with the latest GH5, a very capable adventure doc filming camera that is now in my arsenal? No, no, it wasn't filmed with the GH5. This was actually filmed in August. For those that have been around for a while, we filmed the Slacklife series back in August, and so I filmed with the cameras that I had available to me at that time. So in this kind of live stream, I want to talk about just very generally, but also kind of specifically how I went about getting a cinematic image out of a less expensive camera like the Panasonic G7, which is actually what we filmed with. So I guess that's kind of a nice little tie-in to what cameras we used to shoot. Hi, everyone. That's kind of jumping in. I like to start off live streams with making sure there's actually content happening, because so often when you watch replays of live streams, the person's just like sitting there, like waiting for the names to pop up. But I want to make sure that there's content happening straight away, especially for the replay. Oh dear, what am I doing over here? I'm going to pull up the chat on my main computer so that way I can track with what's going on, because it's really hard. Yo, Noah, good to see ya. Yeah, this is going to take one moment, but then it will all work. Let's pull up the chat. Yeah, pop out chat. Yeah, so we're doing another live stream from the iPhone. We'll kind of see how that goes. I've got the live stream. I've got the live stream window open, I think. Oh dear, maybe I'm messing this whole thing up. I need to make sure I'm. Guys, I'm sorry, I'm new to this. Yeah, but what I want to talk about is kind of just how I went about filming the Slacklife series, because I'm going to be doing a kind of an in-depth behind the scenes episode just on the cameras that I used. And so I thought it'd be kind of fun to address that in a live stream first and kind of just see what are the questions that you guys have based around the cameras that were used. So the cameras that I used the Panasonic G7. I bought it for like $600 right before we started shooting. And I also bought the Sony A6300. The main reason why I bought the A6300 was because I wanted to use that slow motion setting, the 120 frames per second. That was the main reason why I got that Sony there. And also the main reason why I got the Sony. Why did it send two emails? That is okay. Sorry, just got distracted there for a moment. That is kind of the theme of my life. Here we go. Now I got the chat box. Yo, hey everyone that's going in there. I'm going to close that and all the things. Yeah, the main reason why I got that Sony was because I heard from people the autofocus was amazing, and I wanted to be able to hand off the camera to kind of anyone at any given time and make sure that they could get a shot that was usable. Yeah, because again, this series, it was primarily just me filming and directing. So a lot of the footage I was getting, and I was getting myself, and there's certain moments that happen when filming highlighting that you really want to make sure that it's covered from multiple angles, like things like rope swings or once in a lifetime activities. So that's the main reason why I bought the A6300, which is sitting over there, is the autofocus and the higher frame rates. And then I bought the G7 actually off recommendation from my friend Dwayne Bradley, who had mentioned that the sensor in it was the same as the GH4. That's something I did not know, and he kind of filled me in on that. It just said it's basically just like a cheaper body around a GH4 sensor, so you can get a really good video image out of this camera, and you just don't get some of the waterproofing features or the other stuff and the good battery life and whatnot, and you don't get headphone ports and stuff like that. But this ended up becoming the main workhorse that was all filmed with, and that's kind of just like a testament that you don't need. Well, I guess it kind of depends if you like the way the Slacklife series looks or not. I definitely went with a stylized grade on it, but the images that I'm getting out of, these little cameras, I'm really impressed with. It's just kind of a testament that you can get amazing results out of the cheaper cameras that are available these days. Michael, good to have you from Australia. What time is it in Australia right now? That's actually interesting. I noticed Australian people posting April Fool's stuff sooner than we were over here. Did anyone get duped by any April Fool's posts today? I'm trying to think if any actually worked on me. There was only one that gave me a question mark last night before it was April Fool's. I was kind of really Like I didn't know what was going on, and then I was like, oh, tomorrow's April 1st. That makes so much sense. Um, yeah. So, I mean, what questions do you guys have on the cameras that are? Oh, it's 12, just after midday. Yeah, it's definitely not 12 here. Uh, so, I mean, if you're interested, I can talk about the settings I was using. But so let's. Oh man, there's so many things. Kind of the way I approached, for the most part, the filming and the way that I handled the image in camera. I really wanted to get most of the way there on. I really wanted to get most of the way there with the image I was getting in camera. I didn't want to rely on post to try like bring out the colors or things like that. So I shot in Cine V. I shot in Cine V, just the generic picture profile on this Panasonic camera here. And then I most frequently used, let me grab the lens. I use this lens a lot, and I for my interviews, and I also used my Tamron 17 to 50. If you have questions about that, let me know. Yeah, I had a really hard time trusting the Sony A6300. I had a really hard time trusting that because I had bought it specifically for shooting this series as well, and it just there's a few times it overheated, and it really didn't seem like it should overheat in that moment. Like I was maybe using it for 5, 10, 15 minutes in the sun, and it didn't seem that hot, and the thing would overheat. And that just like really bummed me out because I knew it overheated, but I figured that's like overheating after you do like a 30-minute take. And some of I mean, that as an adventure filmmaker, that's where I learned that the reviews from guys that just shoot indoors are kind of useless to me, because I had like watched a bunch of reviews of guys that were like, oh my gosh, like this camera's amazing, and people are complaining about it overheating, but I haven't experienced it overheating. It doesn't overheat that much. Like maybe if you're like leaving it out in the direct sunlight for hours, maybe it overheats. And then sure enough, like 5, 10, 15 minutes shooting outdoors, it overheats on me. I'm like, huh, yeah, those guys like only shoot indoors. I should have thought that one through a little bit more, but thankfully I had also gotten this Panasonic G7. As some of you might remember from way back then, I had bought an A7S, and I had planned to actually use that to shoot, but then I made the decision that I really needed to be capturing the series in 4K. The camera that I wanted to shoot the series on, if we had secured funding, was the Sony FS5. The fader ND and the high frame rates on that camera were the big draw for me. But I ended up not getting funding. And so I just went out and bought this at London Drugs, kind of a camera store here in Canada, for like $600, I think it was. 699 maybe. And I actually didn't use this lens that came with it very much, the 17 to 42, the 14 to 42. I used a Metabone speed booster, which was like more than the camera. I paid more for a speed booster than I did for this camera, which is hilarious. Yeah, always had the Rode mics on top. Those are really fantastic on-camera shotgun mics. I get so much of my location sound with that. I'm going to turn to the chat box here for some questions. Yeah, the Sony Alpha fake article is what got me last night, or it was actually News Shooter that had posted that, and that totally duped me. Damon's asking, I can't remember what do you color grade with. I color graded this stuff directly inside of Premiere using Film Convert. Additional film grain outside of Film Convert, and then also just the Lumetri color panel. What is that lens? I don't know which one you're asking about specifically. Oh, probably this one that I held up. This is the 35mm Rokinon Prime. I've had this probably since like 2011, 2012, when I was first getting into making videos with my T2i. Great lens, but I've definitely worn it out, that's for sure. I got into the Via Rail Youth Pass and will be making a movie this summer. I never traveled out of Ottawa and would love some tips. If you asked specific questions, that I might be able to give some more tips. I guess biggest tips that I can think of are just make sure the subject that you're filming is actually like interesting. I think some people set out to make films about stuff that in itself there's not actually much of a story there, and I think you can make stories out of most anything, but it's really challenging to be making a story out of something that doesn't immediately having something gripping about it in real life. That's just it's so much easier to start filming a story that's actually like interesting firsthand. And then, if that makes sense, like if you're trying to make an interesting story, like you want it to be interesting even before you start rolling the cameras. You don't want to have to try and make it interesting in the way that you film it. That always helps a lot. So that's kind of the way that I've gone. When I was younger, when I was in high school, I used to think the answer was like getting beautiful images, and that was certainly the priority of where I spent my time researching and studying and new cameras and things like that when I was starting out. But I've definitely shifted way more towards content first, and you can see that in the things I make, especially in Untethered, and in these latest episodes. I'll put shots in there that aren't my favorite shots because I think they push the content forward. And that's really important to me, is the content and the story. So even in the last episode that I just put out, there's a shot in there that I'm kind of meh about, but I'm really happy with what it conveys, and so I left it in there. These two chat boxes are behind. That's odd. What's the best way to capture the Go interviews? On the Go interviews. Yeah, the best way to capture those are with a Rode mic on top of camera, like some sort of on-camera shotgun microphone. And then also, I don't think I have it with me here. I love putting labs on people and just recording it to a recorder in their pocket, or using a wireless Rode Link setup. That is really, really handy, and you can get some great audio from that. For the interviews in the first couple episodes, I'm actually just using, do I have that around? I'm actually just using a Rode microphone mounted like close to the subject, and then using an extender and having that go into a recorder. If you're recording like a sit-down interview, where the camera ends up being, especially if you're like zooming in a little bit, ends up being quite far away from your subject. And so the sound you're getting from the on-camera microphone isn't as good as it could be if you got the mic like real close, like right off camera like that. So definitely getting the mic as close as possible for interviews is a big win. You say out. What's wrong with the way I say out, Ethan? You got a problem with the way I say out and about? You think I'm Canadian or something with my Canadian accent? What glass and camera do you recommend for a beginner with a $2,000 to $3,000 budget? One camera, one lens, dock, and interview, run and gun. I would get 2 lenses. I'm going to start there before I go to camera. I would get some form of faster prime lens that can help you get that depth of field look that people love for like cinematic B-roll. So something like, depending on what camera you end up going with, but something like a 35mm 1.8, a 50mm 1.4 or 1.8, any aperture that is less than like f2.8. If you can get a faster lens that is a slightly tighter focal length, you can get that really gorgeous like compression in your shots that help bring about a cinematic feel to the shots that you're getting. And then I would get a zoom lens that has a range to it. So this lens right here is a 14 to 42, and so I'd get a lens like that as well, so that way you could actually run and gun and get a lot of range out of a lens. So for me, when I was starting, the first lenses that I used was an 18 to 55 on a Canon T2i, and also their 50mm 1.8. I wish I had gotten something a little wider than the 50mm, because the 50mm on a crop sensor is a little tight, and so I would have gone with something like a 28 or a 35 for starters, and that's where I ended up at. So these Samyang lenses, or these Rokinon lenses, are actually really, really great lenses for people starting out, because you can get a fast aperture prime, and you can use that especially in low light, but you can also use it to get that depth of field look if you make sure your shots are in focus. Depth of field, I mean, that's what a lot of people have been going for, to like get to a cinematic space. In a lot of ways, it's kind of become the stereotypical like DSLR look of people pursuing like really wide depth of field images. But I still think you can use depth of field really tastefully. Depth of field is like when only a little bit of your image is in focus, and the background is usually like blurry, and if you get lights there, then you get this beautiful like bokeh. I have the Rokinon 85 as well, but again, 85 I love 85 on a full frame, but 85 is starting to get a little bit tight for like run and gun dock stuff, because I can't get a usable shot out of an 85 handheld on a T2i. It's just too shaky. You need a stabilized sensor for something like that. As far as camera, I mean, So you've probably spent about $1,000 there on lenses. Then I'd spend a couple $100 on an on-camera microphone and also a lav that can go in your pocket. You don't want to miss out on the audio stuff. If you miss out on audio, your dock is going to suck. And then I would just look at whatever camera bodies in that price range of what you'd have left. So I mean, the Panasonic G7 or G85, I've never used that one. Those are both great cameras. You could probably pick up. I'm hesitant to say an A6300 because I don't trust those fully. But if you're doing like short moments of filming, you might be able to get some good lifetime out of that. Again, the older Canon DSLRs still aren't bad at all. Let me cough here real quick. Yeah, the older Canon DSLRs are great, like the T2i, T3i, T4i. You can get a good image out of those, and you could probably pick them up pretty cheap these days too. Yeah. Let's see what questions are here. Do you think 4K is as important as marketers make it out to be? No, but I also don't pay attention much to how marketers make it out to be. I feel if anything, it's more just like fellow filmmakers that have made it out to be a really big deal. I talked about it. What video did I talk about this in? For me, 4K was important because once my project is actually finished, so let's say I have a finished story that's a video, it is worth more to the people that buy those things to have it in 4K. Disproportionately so. It's kind of silly actually, but these days a lot of distributors want to be like, they want to have 4K content. So for me, I can make more money from a project after the fact if it's shot in 4K. And since I'm self-funding my own projects, that's like pretty important to maximize the investment across the whole way. Otherwise, I probably just would have stuck with my A7S and shot it with that. But that's why I invested in the G7 and A6300 is I knew I wanted to acquire the image in 4K. In post, 4K is handy because I do like to be able to do punch-ins. I did a lot of that. Not a lot. I did probably 3 or 4 punch-ins on the last episode that like helped me get varying shots. That was really helpful. But I do not think 4K is terribly like mission critical. If you told a really good story in 1080p and you posted it to YouTube in 1080p, it would still have the same impact. It's not like it's going to change how far your story can go. Any tips for precise focus? I would checking your focus before you hit record. Sony's have this beautiful feature where you can punch in while you're recording and like check to see if your focus is correct. But the Panasonic, unfortunately, it can't do that because the processing is pretty tied up and they don't want it to overheat or stop recording. But that's like double checking and checking focus all the time, like doing that 10 times punch in and making sure that it's really sharp on the eyeballs of your subject. That's pretty key. Is 4K important if you're submitting to film festivals? No, I don't think it's important at all for film festivals. In as far as like it playing at the film festival, like none of the, I mean, I don't know of a single film festival that is screening the films in 4K. There's probably like a few select like 4K film festivals. The only component of that I think would be important is if you're going to a film festival to try to sell it to a distributor. So that's often what happens. So like if Netflix is at a film festival and they're going to be buying content there like they do at South by Southwest. So if Netflix is buying a film, Netflix will only buy 4K right now, to my knowledge. So in that sense, selling it, it's important. But in the like actually viewing at a film festival, it's not standard right now to have screeners in 4K. It's standard to do 1080p, especially since most most film like theater projectors are not even up there with that. Do you submit to film festivals directly or through a distributor? With my previous film Untethered, I submitted mainly to the ones that asked me to submit. So I wanted to get into this one called Banff, but I didn't have the film done in time, and I only submitted a rough cut, and they didn't accept the rough cut. So I didn't get into that, but we were asked after we put it live on the internet to submit to some other ones, and so I did submit, and it was accepted because they asked it to. The distributor I'm working right now to sell Untethered, they haven't been submitting it to film festivals as far as my knowledge goes. I could maybe ask them to. I don't know what that would do, but most of the film festivals I submitted to was because I got messages directly from the people who run it, and they said they saw it and they were interested in showing it. What's your workflow for exposing your shots? Dale, it's actually like really simple. like especially when I'm filming outdoors and it's just as we go, I'm exposing for what I see on the screen. Especially with these cameras, like I don't have a lot of exposure tools. Usually if I have a histogram, I'll chuck that up there to see if I'm clipping out the highlights. But often I'll just expose for the faces and try to keep everything in the scene as low as possible so that way I don't lose the image. Especially with the slacklining series, I wanted to have a image in the series that was slightly darker. I wanted kind of a moodier feel to the whole thing. So I definitely tried my best not to overexpose things, but I mean that happens, especially as you're just shooting. Like overexposure happens when the light's changing in the clouds. Yeah, the new like waveform features on the GH5 have me pretty excited. I really wish I had like an external monitor that had some of these exposure tools. I really want to get something like that because it helps you just make sure your shots are in focus and things like that. But then you have to be taking all these extra batteries and it just becomes a bit of a hassle. Do I have a music supervisor? Nope. But you can send me tunes to, here, I'll chuck an email down here that you can send tunes to. Leftcoast Life. Hey, there we go. How can I get funding for a cross-Canada adventure film? I have no idea. I've never been able to get any form of funding for a project. I ran a Kickstarter last year to help cover a little bit of the Slacklife series, but I haven't managed to like secure grants or things like that, even though I know people do that all the time and secure lots of money. I'm not gifted in that area, so I need to bring someone else on board. Does the G7 have zebras? Not to my... Maybe it... Oh. How do I not know the answer to that question? I don't think the G7 has zebras, but I could be wrong. Let me double check. Let me go into film mode. I think the G7 might. Oh my goodness, I'm kind of surprised that I'm forgetting that. I'm just flipping through here. Let me see. I don't think the G7 has zebras. Someone can Google that quick and double confirm. I don't think so. My recommendation for a GH5 lens would be the 12 to 35 version 2. Those are amazing lenses. I would also recommend, if you want something that's like really beautiful, the 42.5. That lens, that Panasonic Leica combo there they killed it on that lens. I want to get my hands on that lens. Okay, see you, Michael. I'm actually going to bail here too. I'm going to go have dinner with my wife. Thanks for popping in. One thing you can do that would mean a ton to me is I'm in this contest right now trying to win a red camera, a nice shiny red. It'd be cool if you hopped over and gave a vote for that. You can go to leftcoast.co/vote. I'll throw that in the chat. I would really appreciate that. But yeah, thanks for everyone who checked out the latest episode. That's the response has been really cool. So I just want to say a huge thank you to you guys that have left comments. That means a lot to me, and those that have shared it and stuff. Yeah, I'm going to be doing more of these live streams for sure. I don't know if I'll be able to schedule them and like say when they're going to be, but I really enjoy just open, candid conversation like this, especially when I haven't been having time to like keep up with the vlogs. So yeah, that's going to be it. Hey, thanks, Ben. Thanks for the kind words. Really appreciate that. Oh man, so many kind things that people say. I really appreciate that, you guys. I'm going to be out for now. Trying to think of anything else. Yeah, I will do more live streams like this. I really enjoy it. And one thing that's kind of fancy, check this out. This is, well, besides my headphones that are plugged in, this right here is entirely wireless. So this mic is wireless over to my iPhone right now with a little converter cable into it. So yeah, it's pretty cool. I don't even know what I'm saying right now. Okay, that's going to be it for this one. If you want to join a crew of people that are learning how to make better adventure films, go to leftcoast.co/learn. Join the crew. Would love to hear your questions there specifically about how I can teach you how to tell better adventure films. That's it for this live stream. Thanks everyone for stopping by. And remember, life's better when you make stuff.